This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Well, welcome to Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We are back here for another episode. This is part of a series that I've been preparing, talking about the 4 elements of an innovation framework. We're going to talk a little bit about that more here in a second, but this is part 3. So there's 2 previous parts. If you haven't listened to them, I would encourage you to go back and listen to those shows also, kind of put it all in context. So we've talked about, there's one show out there that is the 4 key elements that all innovation frameworks have to have. And then we've done each show to go through each of those elements in more detail. So I want to encourage you to go back. If you have not grabbed the slides, if you've been listening to the show, or if you're watching this on YouTube, all of the materials, the slides I use that are available that you can see in the YouTube video, etc., are all available for free download. Just hop over to killerinnovations.com. In the upper menu, you'll see free download. Click that button. It'll take you to a page. Click the button, and you get the free download. But not only for these 4 elements or these 4 shows, but there's a whole bunch of bonus material that is in that download, including templates for roadmaps, templates for forecasting, all kinds of tools. So hop on over to killerinnovations.com, go to the free download, click that, and that will get you up and running pretty quickly. And again, we will be continuing to add to that list of downloads, so you want to keep an eye on that tab. So let's get started talking about today's focus around the 4 elements. And what we're going to talk about today, before we get into it, I just want to refresh everybody's memories here about why we talk about innovation so much, right? What is innovation all about? Well, one is innovation is about challenging the assumptions of our industry or our company. It's about questioning what we think we know about our customers, and it's about being open to ideas. The crazier, the better. I just want to set this framework up, right? Whether you're part of a company, a government agency, a small startup, just remember, we're here about challenging our assumptions, challenging what we know about our customers, challenging ourselves about being open to accepting other people's ideas. And as we walk through the framework, it's all about getting as much of that information, as much as that input into the overall process. So we've shown this diagram before. This is the FIRE framework, the FIRE innovation framework. Remember, framework is not the process. The framework defines the elements that you need to structure your processes around. The 4 elements in FIRE, the F is focus. So focus being define that research of where that opportunity is, where that problem is, where that opportunity is. Where are you going to search for the ideas? You must define this area of focus. If you leave it open-ended, you end up with incremental ideas or ideas that really aren't going to be that impactful into what it is you're trying to do. Next is ideation. Ideation being the process of generating ideas that are going to become future innovations. There's lots of different ways to generate ideas, to do the process of creating ideas. You can do brainstorming, electronic suggestion box, etc. Remember, ideation defines the framework. You can choose whatever process it is that you want to use to generate those ideas. Ranking, use some form of ranking approach. You need to identify the best ideas because you're going to have lots of ideas, but you have to be able to identify what are those best ideas, the ideas that you want to go forward with. And then execution. You've heard me say this before. I'm going to say it again. You're going to get tired of hearing me say this all the time. Ideas without execution are a hobby. And as innovators, we are not in the hobby business. It's about taking ideas and making them real. A lot of people go through and they find the focus, they ideate, they maybe think they've got some good ideas, they write it into an idea notebook, and that's where they stop. That is not where you stop, that's where you begin. Take the best ideas, you run experiments, you test. You want to ultimately launch that best idea, some kind of a new product or a new service. Execution. So again, fire, focus, ideation, ranking, and execution. Now, so far in this series, I've talked about focus and I've talked about ideation. So, what do you think today's topic is? Today's topic is around ranking, about ranking those ideas. Now, why is ranking so important? Look, I'm going to give you a scenario, and I'm going to bet you have had this experience. You get called in to be part of a brainstorming effort. So you get 10 of your best and brightest. You all go into a conference room. That was pre-COVID. And, someone says, hurry up. Management needs us to come up with some new ideas for a product. People start throwing out ideas. Someone's standing at the flip chart, writing them down. Yeah, about 20, 25 minutes, everybody's kind of running out of steam. And then what happens? Well, now you get this, wall full of ideas, this flip chart full of ideas. And someone goes, oh, I'll type them up. I'll type them up. So someone rips off the flip chart, takes them back to their desk. They type out this big long list of ideas into an email, and then they send the email around. What happens? Be honest. What happens? Nothing. Nada. That email gets sent around. Nobody knows what to do with a list of a couple hundred ideas. 10 people in a room, everyone comes up with 20 ideas. You're easily at a couple hundred ideas. What are you going to do with a list of a couple hundred ideas? Nothing, right? You're just looking through that, and you may have one you particularly like. Somebody else may have one they particularly like. What I see typically happen is that gets passed up through management. And what does management do? The executive picks one of them to go forward with, and it was kind of their pet project anyways. So what happened was the role of the ideation activity was absolutely meaningless. Why did you even bother doing it if the executive is going to pick their pet project? That is where ranking comes in. Ranking is the process of sorting through 200 ideas to create some kind of a meaningful list that tells you, here are the ideas that you want to work on, here are the rest of the ideas. Now, it doesn't mean they're less value, but of this pile of ideas that this team generates, here are the ideas at the top that we want to go forward with. Now, many of us have gone through and we've done, phenomenal brainstorming sessions. We've got, great ideas. We got Post-it notes flying around all over the place. But then this gets back to this question of what do you do with them? So we talked about it in the previous show on ideation about grouping ideas. Look, there's going to be duplicates. Not every idea is so radically new. So in the process of ideation, you've now grouped these ideas. And now you can kind of step back, you look at the groupings, and you kind of go, okay, some groupings have more ideas to them, some have less ideas. And as a result, you kind of get a feeling for like a heat map of where are those things. And it's just kind of input and feedback where everybody's kind of looking into a common area. Ranking, again, helps you to kind of filter through that to get to the best ideas. Now, why also is ranking so important is it's the start of your funnel. You start your funnel with ideas, and as you progress that, whether it's through market validation or customer validation or launching it or putting it out to the world, the number of ideas you can work on is decreasing because the dollars and resources for each phase is going up. So when you think about your innovation funnel, the start of the funnel comes from your ranking. If you have a poor selection process, if you have a poor ranking, or you don't do ranking, you're just doing random picks, if you're putting garbage into your innovation funnel, you will get garbage out of your innovation funnel. Ranking is the key. It's the selection process of what ideas you are going to go forward with. So, when we come back, we're going to pick up this conversation and start talking through different ways to rank. How do you get through the process and picking the best ideas that you want to go forward with? So don't go anywhere. We will be right back. Welcome back to Killer Innovations. We are continuing our conversation here in this segment around ranking and why ranking is so important. As we talked about previously in the show, ranking becomes critical to selection of the ideas. If you do a poor ranking process, you end up with garbage in your innovation funnel, and garbage in equals garbage out. If you are struggling with your ability to really create high impact, game changing innovations through your innovation funnel, go back and take a hard look at your selection process. How are you picking the best ideas? And we're going to walk through a couple of different ways to do ranking that I've used for, in some cases, 20 years that have worked very, very well for me. So let's get started. So, when we think about ranking, there's a couple different ways to do it, but the purpose really is to identify the best ideas to execute, to kind of filter out that, the really top best ideas up to the top of that list. And that allows you to then select, commit, start experimenting, and moving those ideas forward. But it isn't just as simple just to say okay, we're going to vote. Everybody give a thumbs up. That's a good idea. Go forward. Doesn't work. You got to kind of get to that next level. And there's, again, a couple different ways to do this. So there are some keys to ranking. Some of those keys to ranking are, one is that you want to leverage the wisdom of the crowd. You pull together a team. You want to select a very diverse set of people to be on the team. And I'm, beyond the typical HR definition of diversity. I'm also talking about, in addition to that, diversity of experiences, diversity of education, diversity of familiarity with the area, right? You want people who are very familiar with the subject matter, but you also want people who have no familiarity, because they're going to look at the problems and things differently. You want as diverse as possible. You want a strong preference that the people who rank are the same people who were part of the ideation, the teams that generated the ideas. Now, in my case, what I typically require is that in the ideation session, we do the ideation, we take a little bit of a break, we go right into ranking, but we do it in the same facilitated event. We don't do ideation 1 week and come back a week later and ideate. If you've got an ideation and ranking effort that you're trying to do about generating ideas, ideate and rank at the same time. The wisdom of the crowd. Well, you need a crowd. I have found that a minimum of 8 people voting gives you really good results. You get less than 8, you run into one individual being able to bias. You get 8, 9, or 10 people, you kind of take out the two ends of the spectrum, and it gives you a scoring mechanism where I have found that if you do it properly, you'll get about the top 2-3% of your ideas will float to the top. There'll be a gap in the scoring, and then you'll get the rest of the ideas. So, minimum of 8. Key to ranking is to avoid bias. You want to get rid of the bias. So, you want to eliminate executive influence. Ever since HP, I get kicked out. I don't get to participate in the ranking exercise, and that's fine. Because if I'm there and I make a comment or I make a facial expression, I can people will change their votes because they want to align with me as the CEO or me when I was CTO at HP. So you want to eliminate the executive bias. Where possible, voting should also be unanimous. So again, ranking. Why are we doing this? We want to identify the best ideas based on some form of an established criteria. So there are two types of ranking. There's what I call wow or dot voting, right? This is using we use little round colored dots. We give everybody a certain number of dots, right? And you just kind of walk up and you put your dots onto the ideas that you think are most important. It's used for quick sorting when you got lots of ideas and you need to quick sort to get down to the ideas that you really want to take a look at. But it's a gut feel. Don't overthink it, move quickly, etc. The second stage is criteria ranking. It's a defined set of selection questions with some form of a scoring structure or architecture to it. Its questions need to be adapted to your organization or team. You just can't use my questions or somebody else's questions for criteria ranking. You need to build your own. And then you need the scoring structure that defines a stacked rank of ideas. So there's some form of score, you sort it, the ones with the highest score are the ideas that you go forward with. So let's talk about wild dot voting. This happens after you've put up all your post-it notes, you've got them all stuck up someplace. You give everybody a certain number of dots and you let them loose. Now, how do you let them loose? Here's the process. 15 minutes, keep it really, really fast. Rule number 1, no talking. No talking allowed. Each person gets 4 dots. A dot is that you've had a wow. You read that or you heard them when they were grouping it or posting it and you go, wow, that's a really cool idea. That's a wow. Put a dot on it. In this case, we gave out 4 dots. Place all 4 of your dots. Now, you can spread them around. You can put all 4 of your dots on one idea, right? You don't want to overthink it. You want to move quickly. You want to get those ideas up there and posted. And do not move other people's dots. You're voting on the idea, not the group. Remember the group? You take a bunch of ideas, you write a circle around it, and you name it. You're voting the idea, so you're voting on a particular post-it note. You're putting a dot right onto that post-it note. You're voting for the idea, not for the group. Do not move other people's dots. I know what you're saying. Why would anybody ever do it? It happens in every facilitated workshop I teach. Someone goes, oh, they didn't mean that. They meant this. And they touch and they move other people's dots. Do not move other people's dots. At the end of all of this, you want to sit back as a team, 8 to 10 of you, look at it, and select the 4 to 5 ideas that have the most dots. 4 or 5 that have the most dots. So let's step back. That one got 5 dots, that got 3 dots, a bunch of votes got 2 dots, 1 vote got 6 dots. Pick the top 4 or 5 ideas that have the most votes. This is a first level filtering. You're using your gut. You're looking at it as a wow. Put your dots, step back after the team is done with their dot voting, and pick and select the top 4 or 5 ideas. Why are we picking the top 4 or 5 ideas? Because those are the ideas that we are going to go forward with the next step of ranking, which is criteria ranking. So when we come back, we're going to dig deep onto what criteria ranking is and how you can do it to get to your best ideas. Welcome back to Kill Innovations as we continue our conversation on one of the key elements in an innovation framework. This week, we're talking about ranking. Next up, we talked about wow or dot voting in the last segment. This segment, we're going to talk about criteria ranking. So, in the last segment, we talked about how to do dot voting. and how to then get yourself down to the top 4 or 5 ideas that your team felt strongly about. That's where your dot, your wow voting occurred. So you've now downlisted your ideas to the 4 or 5 that got that reaction from your team, from the 8 to 10 people that you just got done looking at those all those ideas. So now we're into criteria. You're going to take those 4 or 5 ideas, and now you're going to take a harder look at those to see whether or not they kind of bubble to the top of being ideas that you want to move forward with. So you have to define the criteria. How do you define a criteria? Well, there's 2 dimensions to criteria, the ones that I create. The first one is what's the must-have elements that will define success? Given what you're trying to achieve, what are the elements that, any one of those, if you really hit it and really just crushed it with a great idea, this product would be a huge success. One way to develop these criteria is go back and look at your products or services that were really big wins, that were just wildly successful. And then go back and ask yourself, what questions would have I asked back in the beginning that would have caused me to select this idea and move forward? So you could use a time machine, go back to before that product existed. What are the questions you would have asked yourself that would have gotten you those ideas that led to that award-winning, game-changing, unbelievably successful product or service? If you haven't had one, go back and pick somebody else's product. What questions would you have asked yourself that would have led you down the path to be the creator of the iPhone? What questions would you have asked that would have gotten you to create a Tesla automobile or whatever product or service that you think is kind of the poster child for innovation success? Look at what those questions are. What are those must-have elements? What are those questions you would have asked yourself that would have led to success on coming up with that idea? So that's the first part of defining the criteria. The second part of defining the criteria are, what are the elements that your leadership team is going to look at? What are the elements that your leadership team is going to look at? Now, many of you, are going to look at, the whole issue of these elements from the standpoint of, look, we want to create really great products, but your leadership team is going to be part of this decision criteria. So what are that criteria, right? You got to have a strong positive to the must-haves from your leadership team. You've got to have must-haves from above, and you must be able to meet the criteria that the leadership team is going to define, right? Both of these 2 parts of your criteria, you need to constrain it. You can't have a survey that's 50 questions that you got to apply to every idea. I would tell you that you should be able to develop a really strong criteria process within 4, 5, maybe 6 questions. And that's it. Not 10, not 20, 4 to 6 questions structured the right way. Wisdom of the crowd, minimum of 8 voting can be a very strong and very compelling process. So, what's the criteria that I use? Well, the criteria I use is one that has these 2 elements. In this case, this is the 5 questions. These are the 5 questions that are in my book. These are the 5 questions I used as the CTO for Hewlett Packard. The top 3 questions are the must-haves for success of the product. The bottom 2 are the questions that leadership is going to use to constitute success. So, question number 1, does this idea improve the customer experience or expectations? Does it solve a real problem that a customer is having? Is the customer going to notice it? Is the customer going to want it? Does it save time, money, create more money, whatever? Does it improve the customer experience or expectation? Question 2, does this idea fundamentally change the company's position competitively in the market? Our competitor is going to notice. Will it disrupt the market? And number 3, does this idea radically change the economic structure of the industry? Do you create value in a unique and different way? Now, it's rare you're going to be able to have an idea that's going to be yes for all 3. Yeah, but if you get a yes in one of them, boy, you're off to the races. You get a yes in 2 of them, oh my God, you're crushing it. If you do all 3, go back and look and really test yourself. But if you truly have a yes in all 3, then you should have no problem getting people to throw money at you to support the program. If you get a yes, a strong yes in at least one of those 3, then you must have an answer to yes to both of the following. Does your company or do you have a contribution to make? Is it in an area of expertise? Do you have some unique capabilities? Do you have an access to a market that is unique? Do you have a contribution to make? Or are you going off into some total area where you have no expertise, nothing to leverage, and you're starting from ground zero? Number 5, will the idea generate sufficient margin? This is not a spreadsheet exercise. This is really just about your gut feel. Do you kind of, does this really make sense? Could we create a business model that this could lean into something? Scoring. You score each one from 0 to 5, each question. 0 means absolutely no, no go, nothing. 5 is like, oh my gosh, yes, it's a resounding yes. And then you got kind of gradients in between. So 5 questions, scoring it 0 to 5. So here's the process. Here is the way that you can apply this. One, we set aside 30 minutes. Select the ideas you want to rank using the criteria. That is the 4 to 5 ideas that came out of your wild ranking. For each idea, assign a value 0 to 5 for each of the questions. So if you got 5 ideas and you're ranking 5, you're going to get upwards of, you could have maximum score you could give would be 25. Transfer your score to the team's ranking board. I'm going to show that to you here in a second, and then total your score. So here's the ranking board. Across the top, literally, I would take your Post-it notes that's got all the dots on them, put them right across the top of that. Down the left are the questions, and then you just simply fill in the board. And the way to do that, just a reminder, these are what the questions really mean. Less important, if you can read the questions, just score it the same way across all of the ideas. And this is what your scoring page will look like. So everybody can walk up and write their number, or everybody scores it on their individual sheet and they transfer it to the team score. So you put everybody's individual score up, you total it by the box, and then you total it down to the bottom. So in this case, we have an idea, let's say the first one, idea number 1, gets a score of 78, idea number 2 gets a score of 68, and you just do the same thing, 3 or 4. At the end, out of your 5 ideas that you've run through the scoring sheet, you now have effectively a ranked list of those ideas. That is how simple it is. Now, we've done everything from setting up smart sheets to do it so it's all automated and it's tallying the score you have, to spreadsheets, to all kinds of ways to capture the scores. But asking the questions by idea, totaling up the numbers, creating that rank list, this has been very, very effective for me for, like I said, for the last 20 years. So wow dot voting plus criteria voting to select the ideas. Now the criteria is different. We have criteria. This is the list of the questions for the Department of Education project. It's in my book. It's in the slides. You can download that over at Killer Innovations. But you don't have to use the 5 questions I put up. You can create your own criteria, but think long and hard about them. That is critical to making sure that you do good selection for good ideas that lead to great game-changing breakthrough killer innovations. We'll be right back after this break. Well, welcome back to Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We are wrapping up this week's show talking about ranking and the importance that ranking plays in the process of selecting the ideas. And ranking, I can't overemphasize this enough. Ranking is critical, absolutely critical to making sure that you are working on the right ideas and the best ideas. Otherwise, you're just randomly choosing ideas, and what are the odds of success when you are just randomly scattering all over the place and just trying anything and everything? It will be near zero. So if you want to radically improve the the likelihood of success with your innovation efforts, think long and hard about ranking. How do you select those ideas? So let's take another quick look at what are the keys to ranking. Leverage the wisdom of the crowd. This isn't something about you sitting off by yourself and just doing on your own. Get a diverse team. If you are a lone innovator, go recruit some people. Go recruit, some people that are friends, advisors, people you respect. Ask them to come together, serve them, you know, grill them some hot dogs and hamburgers, or get onto a Zoom call and then send them a nice note and a thank you gift afterwards, right? But get a diverse set of people and get them involved in helping you to go through this ranking exercise around your own ideas. Now, typically, you want to have the same people who generated the ideas to also be part of the ranking. Not required, but that would be the preference. Then again, minimum of 8 people. You want to get enough people. It's not just you and your spouse or just you and your business partner. Get more people involved. Get some people that who aren't going to be afraid to give you truthful process in the ranking. Also, avoid bias. Don't let someone dominate the conversation or try to steer people to how to rank or score. You want to, in the case of organizations that I'm involved in, eliminate the executive influence is kicking me out of the room. And then, where possible, voting should be anonymous. Don't let people just raise hands or whatever. Do it anonymously so people feel like they can give you honest, good feedback. Now, remember, ranking is all about an approach to identify the best idea based on some criteria. If you don't have a criteria, it's purely random. Establish your criteria that constitutes a way for you to make a selection that will have increased the likelihood of success. So you want to have a criteria. It can't be random. And remember, we talked earlier, 2 types of ranking. Use them in conjunction. Do your wow or your dot voting. We buy these bulk packs of strips with color dots. So 5 reds, 5 blues, 5 yellows, 5. And we give everybody the strip so they get their dots. And when you tell them to go dot vote, they can take those. That's all they got. They've got their 5 votes or 4 votes or how many ever votes you want to give them, and they can go up and they can place those dots on the idea, not the grouping, but on the individual ideas. Right? It's based on gut feel. It's used for quick sorting. Don't overthink it. Don't try to analyze it. Don't try to apply some creative approach. Did this idea just trigger something internally? It triggered a reaction from you. You saw something, you thought, wow, that's different. This could be an interesting idea. That's what you're reacting to. In the case of criteria ranking, define a set of selection questions with some form of scoring structure. Questions should be adapted to your organization or to your team, and the score defines the stank rank. So the do the wow voting, pick the top 4 or 5 ones that got the most dots, run those 4 or 5 through criteria ranking, pick the best idea. That's the process. Now you're going to say, wow, that sounds awful simple. It is simple. Don't overcomplicate it. Trust the wisdom of the crowd. Trust the criteria that you're going to establish. You can use one that I've used. I've shared it here. There's also more about it in my book, Beyond the Obvious. I've written about it a ton of times. You can go find it over at beyondtheobvious.com or here on the show. There's past shows. There's 16 years of shows. So you can go back in and find shows that I've talked about that, on. Okay. And this all fits into the FIRE innovation framework. So we've talked about focus, ideation. This week we've talked about ranking. So you've got 3 of the 4 skills, 3 of the 4 elements needed for your innovation framework for your team, for your organization. In the future, we will talk about execution, and that will give you the entire construct of the FIRE framework. And there are literally north of 2,000 organizations that use the FIRE framework. So this is one that has been proven quite successfully. So with that, we're going to wrap up today's show. Really appreciate you taking time out of today's schedule. If you want to experience FIRE from the standpoint of actually running it with your own ideas, with your own team, check out the Disruptive Ideation Workshop. You can just go to disruptiveideation.com, click the button, put your information in. The Innovators Network, which is a network of chief innovation officers and innovation leaders, not consultants. These are people who live it and do it every day, day in, day out. People who've got real experience can come out to your organization, run an ideation and ranking exercise with you, and therefore your team learns the process, and then you can be off and running and off on your own and take advantage of it. So check out disruptiveideation.com. And if you want to contact me, reach out to phil@killinnovations.com. You've got the blog and the podcast. Hey, if you want to get connected, text the word innovation to 44222, or send an email to innovation@killerinnovations.com. That will get us connected and also help me keep you updated on all the latest that we are doing here and upcoming shows and workshops that we will be, or I will be teaching, or the Innovators Network will be teaching. So one more favor. If you like today's show, tell somebody about it. Post a ranking, give us a score over on iTunes or Spotify or iHeart or wherever you listen to your podcast. That helps us get the word out, and it helps me pay it forward, which is my obligation to my early mentor. And with that, have a great week. Go out and create some killer innovations. Bye-bye.